Incoming message.
Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're investigating a newly declassified document, specifically NASA UAP D4. And honestly, this file absolutely shatters the official history of the Apollo 11 mission. I want you to put yourself back in July 1969. The Apollo 11 crew has just returned from the moon. You've got Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins sitting down for this highly classified technical debriefing. And what they describe behind closed doors? Well, it's carefully documented, stamped, filed away, and kept entirely hidden from the public. But then, in May 2026, that exact document was finally released. And what we're uncovering changes literally everything we thought we knew about humanity's defining achievement.
So for decades, we were all fed this pristine public narrative, right? A flawless, routine, historic mission where absolutely nothing unusual occurred. End of story. But the newly declassified May 2026 debriefing reveals a starkly different reality. We're talking about detailed reports of unidentified anomalies and unexplained bright lights. And remember, this isn't some fringe internet theory. This is the written, highly classified reality from the men who are actually up there. It completely contradicts the 1960s public broadcast. What we're looking at here is a massive bureaucratic cover-up that successfully maintained two entirely different versions of history.
And we don't even have to guess what happened, because catalog reference NASA UAP D4 contains Buzz Aldrin's exact word-for-word account. Listen to this. The first unusual thing that we saw, I guess, was one day out or something pretty close to the moon. It had a sizable dimension to it. A sizable dimension? One day out from Earth, close to the moon. Just imagine the immense psychological impact of that moment. You are one of the most highly trained professionals in human history. You're flying through the pitch-black void of deep space, and you encounter something massive that simply shouldn't be there.
But the debriefing doesn't stop there. Aldrin actually goes on to describe an unexplained light, and he specifically uses the word laser to articulate what they were witnessing out there between Earth and the moon in 1969. He says, quote, a fairly bright light source, which we tentatively ascribe to a possible laser. Now think about the technological limitations of the 1960s for a second. We are navigating to the moon with less computing power than the smartphone in your pocket. Yet out in the vacuum of deep space, this highly credentialed astronaut is trying to rationalize a brilliant unexplained light source as a laser.
Now, the really crucial point here is how the bureaucracy reacted to this. This astonishing technical debriefing was immediately filed away and kept completely locked down from the public for exactly 57 years. When we look at this from the viewpoint of an investigative researcher digging through government archives, that timeline is just staggering. I mean, routine government declassifications usually see sensitive documents released after, 20 or 30 years? An almost 6-decade embargo on a simple mission debrief is highly irregular. It points to a systemic, deliberate effort to ensure that whatever the Apollo 11 crew experienced would absolutely not see the light of day in the 20th century. So, as an investigative researcher, this raises the ultimate question. If this was just 1960s technological limitations, or standard space debris, or maybe a simple optical illusion, why on earth did the bureaucracy mandate a half-century cover-up? Declassification is usually a super routine process. Documents get released when they're no longer sensitive. But a 1969 crew debriefing describing an anomalous light source remained deeply sensitive until 2026. 57 years is an incredibly long time to keep a lens flare or an instrument error classified. Wouldn't you agree?
And the mystery actually deepens when we expand our scope. If we compare Apollo 11's deep space transit anomalies to the Apollo 15 mission, it reveals that this wasn't just an isolated event. During a lunar surface EVA for Apollo 15, astronaut Jim Irwin reportedly filmed an unidentified object right on the edge of a crater. Crucially, that footage has never been publicly released in full. So we're seeing a distinct classified pattern here, anomalies occurring both during transit to the moon and directly on the lunar surface itself.
The May 2026 release proves this beyond a shadow of a doubt. By analyzing multiple Apollo transcripts, we're seeing independent crews across totally different missions reporting phenomena that defy all known explanations. We've got independent reports of unexplained lights, objects behaving inconsistently with known space debris, things that clearly aren't just optical reflections. And the common thread tying it all together? It was all suppressed by decades of strict classification. The psychological weight on these crews, knowing exactly what they saw, but being forced by their own government to keep quiet, it must have been immense.
Now, to prove this isn't just science fiction, we need to look at how professional astronomers actually categorize these events. They use a term called transient lunar phenomena, or TLP. It's a highly legitimate astronomical term used to define documented, unexplained lights, structures, or sudden changes in appearance on the lunar surface.
You see, the moon has always been central to unexplained aerial phenomena research, not because of pop culture, but because of hard data. What the Apollo astronauts experience falls perfectly into a well-established, centuries-old scientific category.
In fact, NASA maintains an official catalog containing over 2,200 of these documented anomalies. That number is it's staggering. It completely proves the immense scale of this hidden reality. We are talking about 2,200 separate, documented incidents reported by professional astronomers observing the lunar surface. This totally changes the context of the Apollo 11 debriefing. Buzz Aldrin wasn't just seeing something random. He was witnessing a phenomenon with an extensive, heavily documented historical precedent that the space agency was already quietly tracking.
Historically, there is an undeniable pattern here. Way back in the 1700s, early professional astronomers were already documenting unexplained lunar lights. Fast forward to 1966, and NASA's own lunar orbiter photographs would appear to be regularly spaced structural anomalies on the moon, findings that were, of course, quietly filed away. Then, in 1969, we have the Apollo 11 classified debriefing. And finally, this massive historical gap ends in 2026 when 160 UAP files are suddenly declassified. Something has been observed near and on the moon consistently for over 3 centuries.
Just think about the immense psychological weight of this cover-up for a second. 600 million people watched the moon landing. It was arguably the defining achievement of the 20th century, yet every single person watching that broadcast in their living room was completely unaware of the hidden reality. The flawless illusion was broadcast to the masses, while the crew's true experiences encountering sizable objects and unexplained lasers were immediately locked away in government vaults the second they returned home. NASA knew, the government knew, and they said absolutely nothing.
But the story doesn't end here. Looking impartially at the current political landscape, a second tranche of files has already been promised by former President Donald Trump. Tranche 1 gave us the 160 files we've just analyzed, completely blowing the lid off the Apollo 11 debriefing. If Tranche 1 conferred what Buzz Aldrin saw, what kind of suppressed mission footage or deeper astronaut debriefings might be sitting in Tranche 2?
Knowing the government buried this sizable object and light source for over 5 decades, I really want to leave you with this final thought to spark your curiosity. Based on these newly declassified transcripts, what do you think Buzz Aldrin truly encountered out there in the dark? The transcript leaves a lot of room for interpretation, but one thing is now an absolute, declassified fact. They were not alone in the dark. Keep questioning, keep analyzing the data, and thanks for joining me for this explainer.
Come to me, chickens, cock-a-doodle-doo.